Hello and welcome to Market Talks, a series of podcasts presented by Argus addressing the events impacting commodities and the energy sector in Brazil and around the world. My name is Gisele Augusto. I'm the specialist of fertilizers for Argus Brazil Grain and Fertilizers publication, and today I'm with Bruno Castro, also a fertilizer specialist for the publication. Hi Bruno.
Hey Gisele, thanks for having me.
Thank you. So let's start talking a little about how the market is going. We are starting the year, so 2026 just started. What we are going to expect for fertilizers this year, what are the main concerns for the market?
The scenario that we will have for the Brazilian fertilizer market in 2026 should be one of the main topics discussed in Fertilizer Latinoamericano conference, which is organized by Argus and will be held in Miami between January 26th and 28th. Gisele, what topics do you think will be highlighted at this year's FLA?
Bruno, considering that we are still talking about postponement attitude from farmers that started 2-3 years ago, people will mostly be discussing what the final volumes of urea and AMSU for this 2025-26 second corn crop will happen. So when farmers will come to these final volumes or for a repeat demand for after planting, and also what the perspectives for soybeans 2026-27. We already started seeing some deals happening since October, November 2025. So we are going to see more discussions about what are the main fertilizers they are going to use, or what the first phosphate fertilizer they are going to choose to start buying and everything. Also, they will discuss the pattern of purchases for farmers. So if they are going to continue to postpone purchases in 2026 and on, and also the price tendency for the year. So if prices will continue to see a firmness, or they will be more volatile, or even with a downward tone.
Yeah, that's right. Talking about nitrogen-based fertilizers, we had Brazilian ammonium sulfate imports reaching a record high in 2025 as more competitive prices led buyers to opt for AMSU instead of urea. Brazilian imports of AMSU reached almost 20.8 million tons in 2025, a 28% increase compared to 2024. This position total AMSU imports in 2025 at approximately 100,000 tons above urea imports, which total 7.7 million tons, a 7% decrease compared to 2024. This shift towards low-content fertilizers like ammonium sulfate was also observed among phosphates. Right, Gisele? How did this happen?
Yes, Bruno, it was very similar to what happened to nitrogen. So Brazil usually imports a couple of phosphates. So in the high content phosphates, as we call, we have MAP 1152 and TSP, usually with 46% of B2O5. We also have the NPs that usually come from China, like the 0840 plus sulfur or without sulfur, or the 1144. So that usually comes only from this region. And in the low content, we have the SSP that we usually import the 19 or the 20% of content. So Brazil imported 3.2 million tons of SSP in 2025, which was a record and also above 2024, 20% above. And for MAP, we had the lowest level imported since 2016, so around 3.1 million tons, which is the same difference that we saw in nitrogen, 100,000 tons of difference between low content and high content. For the first time, we have SSP as the main phosphate source for farmers, and this is much related to availability of each product. So MAP, we only have 2 regions sending to Brazil most of the time. Of course, we have China, but China has a couple of issues with quotas and everything. We rely mostly on Morocco or Russia. And for SSP, we have a more ample variety of origins offering to Brazil. So this helps farmers to choose their fertilizer, and also the cost of each fertilizer. So MAP, TSP were at higher levels than expected by farmers, while SSP was cheaper for them. But the thing now is that we need to look into sulfur prices. Sulfur is one of the raw materials to produce SSP and is in an upward trend. We are seeing prices reaching record levels in a couple of places globally. And in Brazil, we saw prices above $530 per ton. So this is impacting production costs at the origins and also in Brazil, because we produce SSP in Brazil. And we are seeing this being passed on to farmers and reducing demand so far. We saw a couple of deals happening in August, September, October 2025, and now deals are not happening anymore because of this high price of the sulfur of the raw material. Sulfur is something that we need to continue to look into 2026 because it is a byproduct, so we can increase the production without increasing production of another product. So demand usually grows and higher and faster than supply. So this creates a divergence in the global balance. And we have not only fertilizers using it, but also metals and batteries. So we need to look into it and the cost of the raw material for the fertilizer production. Also, what we should be looking into in 2026, Bruno?
I think the international scenario should play an important role in defining whether this low content fertilizers trend will or not continue this year. And China and Russia are important factors, not only because they are the two largest suppliers of fertilizers to Brazil, but also because they are among the largest global suppliers. Market participants indicate that China may restrict export of high-content phosphates until August to meet its domestic demand. This has already raised DAP and MAP levels globally, and if it materializes indeed, it could solidify Brazil's preference for purchasing SSP and NPs as the main source of phosphates. And Russia, which exported about 17% of all urea bought by Brazil in 2025, is still embroiled in conflicts that has hampered the production and flow of fertilizers to the export market. This could further reduce global availability of urea and raise prices, which in theory would lead Brazilian importers to opt to MSU against urea as the main source of nitrogen. In addition to these two powerhouses, we also have Iran and Venezuela, which are also important sources of urea to the Brazilian market, and they're both experiencing geopolitical instabilities that could result in cuts in nitrogen production. So we have an open scenario regarding the competition between low and high content fertilizers for 2026.
Also, when we talk about this geopolitical scenario, we should remember 2025, we had the US tariffs going on for most of the year. And for fertilizers, this would mean an impact for potash mainly, if we talk about how Brazil could be hampered by it. So most of the year we had some uncertainties over how potash would apply in these tariffs, and prices start to increase in early 2025. We saw monthly increases of $5 to $10 per ton, and this firmness continued through the year and starting 2026. Despite the tariffs not being an issue anymore, US lifted the sanctions against Belarus, which is a major producer of MOP and a major origin of the product to Brazil. So this could change the trade flow. That's where we need to take a look into how the trade flows will adapt in 2026.
Nice. And Gisele, what do you think should be highlighted for the Brazilian market this year?
If we take aside the geopolitical side that we already talked about, the postponement, I think another alert would be the credit risk. It's something that was also a main thing in 2025. So farmers had trouble accessing credit, getting money to finance the crops, to finance inputs. That's something we should continue to see in 2026. Of course, this can develop during the year, but something that we need to take a look into because it's linked to this postponement. So if farmers don't have the money to buy the fertilizer, they will continue to postpone purchases. So that's something that we need to take a look into. Thank you, Bruno, for participating with me.
Thanks for having me.
And these and other episodes of our podcast are available on the Argus website at www.arguspedia.com. Visit the page to follow the events that affect global commodity markets and understand the developments in Brazil and in Latin America. We'll be back soon with another edition of Market Talks. See you soon.
Goodbye.